Jobs called a press conference and attempted to regain control.
We're not perfect. We know that. You know that.
He started by saying, look, this is a problem, but it's not just Apple's problem.
Phones aren't perfect.
He said that this sort of antenna issue was common to things like the BlackBerry, to Nokia handsets, to a range of different devices on different networks.
He didn't want it to be an Apple engineering problem. It is an engineering problem.
Does that make sense?
He actually then said what they're going to do.
We want to give everybody a free case. Bumper case solves the signal strength problem.
Alternatively, you can bring it back within 30 days
for a full refund.
After 4 long weeks of negative comment, a few words were all it took to turn the tide. Apple's confession was inevitable. It was getting more hostility for its handling of the affair than for the original problem. But the company's ultimate solution did satisfy most iPhone users, and soon the story was off the front pages.
If it's a serious issue, you mustn't delay, you mustn't fog the issue, you must confront it head on and deal with it. You can never blame the customer. Nothing is ever their fault.
Any strong, successful brand has got to be trusted by its consumers. Now, if people's trust and indeed affection for your brand keeps on being affected by mistakes, by substandard products in particular, that is what erodes its fundamental and economic value.
Apple weathered the storm, and the iPhone continues to be one of the best-selling handsets in the £15 billion UK mobile market. But it could be a warning that no company, especially one as huge as Apple, can guarantee devotion when its customers start to feel ignored. The aim of any marketing campaign is to attract more people to choose your brand. But it's vital that you don't alienate your old, faithful customers in the quest for new ones. This is the story of how one of Britain's most venerable companies, in 1770, wilted and collapsed. Thanks in large part to a risque rebranding exercise that tried too hard to sex up its image. Yardley was once famous in the UK and around the world for its fragrances, soaps and cosmetics. It had 3 royal warrants to its name.
Traditional and lavender. I always think of lavender when I think of Yardley.
It is the English quintessential garden. You think of all sorts of florals, lavender, rose.
Everybody's nan has used Yardley at some point in the past, which is a strength and a weakness of the brand too.
What was once fashionable and classic by the 1990s had lost its edge.
When you've got the Queen Mother using Yardley, you know, how do you sell that to a younger audience?
Lavender. I can smell lavender. It stinks.
Our classic Yardley customer is a very conservative lady, probably slightly more mature, who's bought Yardley for many years and likes to stick to the same fragrance.
I love it, though. It's a lovely smell. It is beautiful.
Not only were Yardley's customers in decline, but in 1994, there was a revolution in the world of fragrance that left Yardley's reasonably priced floral scents relegated to the discount shelf.
CK1 is probably one of the world's ultimate fragrance success stories. They came in with an absolute blockbuster concept.
A fragrance for a man or a woman.
The pricing point basically came and blew up the mid-market pricing completely.
At the same time, you had the premium fragrances starting to come onto the high street through groups like Superdrug and others who could buy it overseas cheaply and bring it in.
It's incredibly competitive. You need to have fantastic marketing, and ideally you need to come up with a product that women just can't do without.
The squeeze on profits was punishing for Yardley's new owner, an American investment bank that had borrowed heavily to pay for the company. The bankers decided what was needed was a total brand makeover, focusing on the younger customer with money to spend on cosmetics.
The owners had relaunched Maybelline in the States and believed very strongly that they could do the same job with Yardley in the UK.
It goes from wet to set in 1 minute flat. One incredible finish.
The American bankers had bought Maybelline, turned it round, and sold it off at double the value.
Kind of nice when this beauty thing can keep up with you.
Key to this success was the signing of supermodel Christy Turlington to be face of the brand.
Christy Turlington had done a great job for Maybelline, so they had to have another person to do the job for Yardley.
In 1996, Yardley proudly announced it had signed up one of the most famous supermodels in the world.
Whether you live in Bali or Basildon, Greenland or Greenwich, you couldn't fail to recognise her name or her face.
I remember exactly, I was in Knightsbridge on the phone to someone saying, "Have you heard Linda Evangelista's new face of Yardley?" And everyone thought it was a bizarre choice.
Yardley had chosen a catwalk superstar from Canada.
Here is a very traditional English rose flowery-based brand, and here is a supermodel who's not English, who doesn't have any of those associations. This would immediately start to suggest these are rather unsuitable bedmates.
She was something which the beauty press could wine and dine on. This was something really exciting in their lives. They just loved it.
But capitalising on Linda's famous face to promote the all-important makeup relaunch was going to be a challenge. Now, the Yardley marketing team couldn't afford to roll out television ads for their locked-in colour cosmetics range. So to get noticed by younger customers, they decided their magazine and billboard ads needed a dose of shock value.
The thinking behind Locked In Colour as a campaign was very much about creating a vibrant impact on the sides of buses and in posters that made people stop and look.
It was really to give the message across to the consumer to say, this is a lipstick that is not just going to disappear on your coffee cup. It's locked on. It's locked in.
But the British public didn't lock on to the message in Yardley's ads. It certainly wasn't what anyone expected from the company that made the Queen Mother's lavender water.
They were desperately trying to be sexy, and instead of being sexy, they were just being kind of crass, and it was a bit vulgar.
They had handcuffs and her
Bars
being in jail. It's all a bit S&M.
If the business success of your brand is built on your traditional consumers loving you...
I love it, though. It's a lovely smell.
You mess with that at your peril.
The 40-year-old consumer really didn't identify with it at all. They also couldn't really understand why Yardley, this paragon of utter Englishness, was putting a model on vibrant colours wearing chains.
It makes a brand that's trustworthy look like they've got a bit more money than sense, because you know Linda Evangelista's not going to come cheap.
She made that famous comment, she's not going to get out of bed for less than £10,000 or whatever a day.
I think we paid considerably more than that.
There was an original signing fee somewhere in the region of $1 million. Then her annual fee was around $1 million. There were costs of the air travel, the entourage, the hotels, and the add-ons that go with high-maintenance people.
Despite all the expense, the revamp didn't deliver the profits that Yardley's banker owners needed. They'd borrowed so heavily to purchase the company that interest on the loans far outweighed Yardley's annual earnings.
The business was extremely highly geared, with a fairly small chunk of equity and a very large bucket of debt.
Really, the sales on the cosmetics weren't coming in to the level that would have been expected. The competition were ramping up their activities, and so there was more and more concern that we were living rather hand to mouth.
By the summer of 1998, the company was in crisis. Yardley was warned that its cosmetics were on the verge of being taken off the shelves of Britain's biggest pharmacy chain, Boots.
Even though you've got an inkling of what could be happening, you never really believe that it will happen until suddenly one day the company's fallen over.
The sweet smell of failure. Not even a supermodel could save Yardley. The perfume and cosmetics company Yardley has called in the receivers.
I was in the centre of Birmingham's Bullring promoting a new teen fragrance, and I looked around on, I think it was a TV rental shop, and I saw our factory at Basildon. all over it. And I got on the phone to the office and just was told then, actually, you have to pack up everything and come home now because this company is in receivership.
That's 2 years of huge hard graft. What happens next? Where am I? Where am I with my family?
And there were people there who had stayed on, were very loyal to the business after 30 years, and they just lost their pensions. And that was very hard to see, you know, older people crying because they just lost everything.
A lot of unhappy people in there. It's heartbreaking. Absolutely gutted.
I'm devastated. I really am.
Yardley's new look had failed to rescue the company. It collapsed, owing more than £120 million.
The cosmetics industry is a high-risk industry to be in. There's a lot of people, including ourselves, who've tried it and haven't succeeded in it. You've really got to spend a lot of money in marketing and packaging and so on to have any chance of competing at all.
I think that if we had potentially had another 12 months runway, we would have started to see some much improved results. If you have the budget, you can do that. We didn't have that luxury.
It's very rarely true that rejuvenating an established brand in one leap, and particularly going from traditional to modern, is possible. If you're not careful, you get what's called cognitive dissonance, which actually you've got a brand over here associated with stuff that your traditional users just look at and think, that's not my brand.
What they didn't do was look at their core attributes. You know, we're British, use that. It's about fragrance and lavender, use that. What they did was they just took the name and they moved it into a whole other sort of bevy of core attributes that they wanted, not that existed.
Of course, Yardley was in seriously poor financial health before it attempted a personality change, but that just made the mistake all the more damaging. And it was a classic business error, making a futile attempt to be something you'd like to be, rather than making the best of what you actually are. Nowadays, the Yardley name belongs to British firm Lorna Mead, which relaunched its lineup of classic floral favourites last year. It's easy to scoff at businesses which mess up, but remember, most of their mistakes come from trying to do something ambitious. The problems arise when they don't just try, they try too hard. Whether it's Sunny Delight getting carried away in its bid to create a healthy impression, Hoover's misdirected enthusiasm for selling more vacuum cleaners, or Gerald Ratner's desire to be funny. At least you can say about them all, they were aiming high. If you'd like to discover more about any of these stories, go to our website and follow the link to the Open University. bbc.co.uk/business nightmares. Next week, stories of the deals that spelled disaster and pet projects that backfired, including how Cadbury tried to help fight Britain's obesity crisis with chocolate.